All right, Chris Popper, I'm joined here with Dr. Marc Gousse, who is the Superintendent of Schools for AOS 91. And we're talking about school security. Last week there was a horrific act down in Florida, and it prompted us to have a discussion about safety here in the schools. And I know that there have been some changes made here at the high school. You now have to be buzzed in. There is a kind of like a secure holding area by the main office. But there's also, I think, a desire by some to have more done. There's also a question as to, on some in the community, like, oh my gosh, we're already doing so much.
Right.
So go at it.
Well, first of all, my heart and I think feelings go out to the victims and the families, not just in Florida, but through all these senseless acts that our nation is dealing with.
Yeah.
And, for nothing else, I think it gives us opportunity to give pause, and think about these things and what we can do to move forward. To keep our students, our staff, and our community safe. So you mentioned some of the things that we've had of late, specific to the high school, but with all our schools, I want the community to know and our students to know we're very mindful of the balance that we need to provide for safety and security, but recognizing that these are public schools and that we want the community in our school and we want them to come to our schools and be a part of that. That hasn't changed, and that
Right.
philosophy hasn't changed. I think the analogy I would give you is that if you try to go to MDI Hospital or the Jackson Lab or any area entity, you're not just going to walk right in. There are protocols and expectations everywhere, so schools are really no different. And the times in which we live in have necessitated some thoughtful responses, but I want people to know we have to keep that in balance. We don't want to alienate our student or our staff from our community. It's fair to say that on the continuum, we're raising the level of awareness and expectation while maintaining that balance. And we're still open and want to receive feedback about how that's working for people. So single point of access and entry is the expectation for all of our buildings, not just the high school.
During school hours.
Yes, during school hours. And that's a good point, because if you come to a basketball game or you come to a football game, or those are different types of events. Or, I dare say, too, because of the volume of people in the traffic, the comings and goings of staff and students will look different
Right.
in the days when we're transitioning in and out.
Yeah, but normal school hours, you're looking for one point of access.
Yes.
In and out of the schools.
Yes, and with that, that comes with an explanation where we need to engage our students and our staff about that expectation, about making sure that doors stay secure.
Well,
not propping them open.
Right, like going here at the high school, if somebody forgets something in the car,
Sure.
To run out by the school, by the
Sure.
door, by the gym. I
Yeah.
mean, is there the expectation that maybe these doors are going to become alarmed?
Well, it's hard for me to answer that question,
Okay.
where that goes, Chris. I think it's fair to say that we need to do, we'll continue to do assessments and reviews in all of our facilities, but we're not at that point now. I think to that question, what I'd say is this is an opportunity to sit with our students and staff and engage them to say, guys, this is what we need you to do. This is what we need your help on, and here's the reason why. And engage them and elicit their support.
And to that extent, I mean, we were talking just before we talked about this, that whole concept of after 9/11, see something, say something. I mean, some of the incidents that have occurred, you've had students that have brought those to administrators or teachers' attention, that they've seen something on social media or have overheard something, and that's really the first defense.
Chris, you just nailed it. You know, if there's one thing that we can emphasize today, outside of our relationship with our community and first responders and public safety, that's it. That's the crux of it right there. If you see something, say something. If it doesn't feel right, look right, or act right, tell somebody so we can check it out. And we are blessed that in the instances over the past year or so that we've had to check out, unfortunately nobody's gotten hurt, it's because folks have come forward and done that very thing.
Right. I mean, you know, case in point is I made a call yesterday to the Bar Harbor Police Department. I'm like, well, this is kind of silly, but it was, I'd hate to think that something occurred and that I could have prevented it.
Right. And they welcome those calls, and they'll tell you, thank you, and they'll check it out. But that's what they want, and that's what we want. And that's the thing that I want to emphasize with our students at all levels and our staff, that nobody needs to take it on. Nobody needs to be the expert. You just need to do three things: report, report, report. That's it.
Right.
That's it in a nutshell. You know, I guess if I may, I want to talk about some of the things what we'd like to do in the coming days and weeks. So I want our students, our staff, and our community to know this is ever present on our mind, that what we're all about is teaching and learning, but teaching and learning can't occur if we don't have an environment where people feel safe and comfortable. So we have to balance that expectation with that ever-present vigilance. I want folks to know that we have plans and procedures in place that don't sit on a shelf and collect dust, that we review them regularly with public safety officials. We're required, at a minimum, to review them annually and submit them per statute and have them approved by the board, which we do.
I know that Ellsworth has done active shooter trainings at the school. I don't think that's something that Bar Harbor has done. Is that something that they may consider doing, or is that something I need to talk to the chief and Lieutenant Kearns
You should talk to the chief and Lieutenant Kearns, but I can tell you from my experience in that world, typically wherever that is conducted in a region, there's interagency cooperation, and so those assets will go to that site and they will practice. What I can say about those types of trainings is, for nothing else, they're useful for tactical responders, but more importantly, the familiarity of a layout of a building is most important for those individuals. And so, irrespective of active shooter training, we encourage and welcome any and all of our public safety folks to be in the buildings and be familiar with the contents. We update our building schematics annually, and we provide those to public safety assets so that they have that information. So the liaison with public safety is certainly important. You mentioned common access. I want folks to know that when they come to the school, the expectation of signing in and signing out and stating their business isn't because we're trying to alienate anybody. It's to make sure that they're safe and our students and staff are safe. And it's a protocol that we have as an expectation that's not specific to schools. I think it's universal in our culture now, or is growing there. Vigilance and visibility. I want folks to know that when they have an issue or concern and they call the school, we want our administrators to respond, but they may not be able to respond at that minute, because my expectation for me and others is to be out and about, be visible, be seen, form connections, build relationships, know what is the comings and goings of your school. So they may not be readily available when somebody calls or has a concern, because they're out and about. That is true of teachers too. When teachers and bus drivers and custodians and support staff, these folks are the eyes and ears of our school. They have the relationships with our students. They are the people that students are they're gonna see things that aren't right when a student doesn't look right, feel right, act right, or when that student wants to go and tell somebody. So there again, you know, the contact piece during the day, it may not be as needs driven as the relationship piece with the student.
To that extent, I mean, you were out and about last week.
Yes.
When students silently protested the Parkland shooting.
Yes.
And you were pleased that they did.
Well, I was standing there. I commend our students in terms of how they responded. I'm so proud of them. They actually had some silent moments before school. Didn't interfere with the instructional day, which I thought, wow, this is amazing. Kudos to them. But then after school on their own time, not during the instructional day, they took the opportunity to engage as a group, and they were coming up the walkway. Principal Annie was there. There were some other folks, and they were looking at me, and I was looking at them, and I was like, where's this going? And I started clapping, and I told them I was proud of them, which I was, in terms of how they did it peacefully, respectfully, and as a group. And that is a testimony to who they are in this community.
And I thought Matt Haney's remarks at the assembly that day were outstanding.
Absolutely. You know, these are times where people need to be heard. They need to process. They're looking for reassurances. They're looking for answers, and that comes from collective voice. To that point, I think it's important, and I'm working through my board chair and my boards, that we will engage in a community conversation around this and other pieces in the near term. I don't have a date yet. I need to check with my board members, but I'm envisioning within the next 2 weeks, probably towards the week after next, that we host a community conversation. I'm thinking probably here at the high school, in terms of being central, and my thought around that, my initial thought would be to have a panel of individuals, to include myself, public safety assets, social workers. I think it's really important to talk about the social and mental health needs and support services, to be proactive, to basically relay some of the things that we do and that practices that we have in place, and an opportunity for the community to weigh in, ask questions, and respond. And I think it's important to start that conversation. In parallel to that, my plan is to do some listening tours with students and with staff around this issue, and then bring back some additional recommendations to boards for considerations. They may be procedural, they may be policy driven, they may in fact involve some resources for budgetary purposes as well.
I mean, anything that you do in terms of expenditures has got to go before the board.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, if you're looking at metal detectors, if you're looking at other, more resource officers, things like that, all of that comes with a cost.
Right, and just to be really clear, those aren't things that I'm recommending. Okay. I would tell you right now that I think right now the best thing that we can do, I want to reassure the community that we do have procedures and protocols and plans and supports in place. I'm comfortable with that. We never give guarantees to anybody, but right. That said, we never take anything for granted. All options need to be on the table, but that's a conversation with boards, and I will say that there's schools of thought, Chris, on Second Amendment rights, metal detectors, all of that. I really don't want to get into the political weeds, but here's what I would say to all that. In the history of our nation, whether we go back to Woodrow Wilson with isolationism, whether we go back to prohibition with alcohol, the war on drugs, whenever we as a culture have put walls around things, my observation is that that's never worked. I think if we're going to have capacity for real, substantive, and positive change, we need to engage our kids, engage our community, and really put resources in place for supports for social, emotional, mental health, and relationship building.
Yeah.
That will have the most capacity, in my opinion, and carry the day. Balanced with increased vigilance and security and practicing those procedures.
I think a lot, and anecdotally, maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, if there are restraining orders, if there are things that occur in a family unit that impact students, parents need to communicate with the school so that way they're involved, because sometimes if there are restraining orders, if there are, things are happening in that family unit, that can overflow into the school day.
Absolutely. And you bring up a great point. People should feel comfortable coming forward. That will be held with confidentiality, with sensitivity.
Right.
We embrace that, and nobody will be turned away, ostracized, or made to feel anything less than whole. That's absolutely the thing. Reach out and ask for help or support. And if it's not that person or their family directly, somebody that they care about or know about, we want to help.
What about if students or even staff, are feeling nervous just because of, we sit here and we're in a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week news cycle.
Right.
You can get bombarded with bad news, with everything. What support mechanisms are there for both students and staff?
Well, different people respond differently to different things. You don't know. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know what trauma that person has or has not had in their life. What I would say to that is that, again, that comes back to the relationship piece of teachers and support staff and administrators and parents knowing their children and recognizing that these are times of stress or concern, and just putting everybody into an environment where we bombard them with information may not be comfortable, may in fact traumatize somebody.
Right.
So I think a broader approach with information, and here's the information. If you'd like to know more, tell us. But more importantly, here's some services that if you or a friend or you need support, social workers, guidance counselors.
You've got advisories here at the high school.
And generally speaking, I think people are pretty cognizant if there's a change in behavior or an emotional swing or a downturn or an upturn. And we want to know. And I'm not suggesting that is going to lead to a catastrophic, tragic event, but a series of those things, that gone unchecked or without support aren't positive for somebody.
Right.
And so we want to provide those safety nets for people and their families as well. Because if we don't have the resources within the school, we want to work with community or interagency cooperation to get that support there and reach out.
Okay.
I think this is going to be a long journey. Continue to be a long journey, but I think...
Well, it has to be.
It does. And for those victims, we owe ourselves a sustained conversation. And wherever this goes, I do know this. If we're going to have any capacity for lasting, meaningful, positive change, the kids need to be part of that equation and conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're seeing that in Florida right now.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. What did we miss, if anything?
There'll be more information coming out on when we have our community conversation.
Okay.
We'll certainly invite you and others. If folks have questions or concerns or thoughts or feedback, I welcome their commentary. I'm available by phone and email.
What's the phone number here?
The phone number is 288. It's 207 288-5049.
Okay.
And I return all my calls. And my email is Marc, M-A-R-C.Gousse, G-O-U-S-S-E, at MDIRSS.org. And certainly our building principals, people feel comfortable, they know them, and their teachers reach out to them, and that information can come to me if they need me involved. But I just want people to know that this is on our minds, it's in our hearts, and we're going to continue to work this issue.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. Thanks for watching. Check out all the other videos we have on the WDEA YouTube channel.